and welcome to Offsite Dirt. My name is Mark Willie, and we're back covering more of high performance build. I'm joined with Audree Grubesic, and we have a special guest. Audree, tell us all about it.
We have Jake Bruton with Aarow Building. He is the chief builder at Aarow Building, which is a high performance, really unique company out of Missouri. Welcome, Jake. How are you today?
I am fantastic. Thank you guys for having me.
Lovely, and thank you for being here. We had a brief discussion about your company. Can you give us a little bit of background about Aarow Building and what makes it special in the marketplace?
Absolutely. Today, or 2 months ago, is our 40th anniversary of being in business. I'm the second generation owner. I've owned the company since 2007. We are a renovation and new home company in Columbia, Missouri. And we also have an office in the Kansas City market, and we do high performance new construction up there as well.
40 years and branching into another state, another market is something a lot of folks couldn't really wrap their heads around. They might say, "Oh, wow, that's exciting," but you know, the builders out there are probably saying, "Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot to take on." Most restaurants last a year. Most will never see 8 years. 40 years of transforming buildings. Exciting. I didn't realize it was 40 years. So obviously a tip of the cap to your father for for all the work in the trenches to get there, and then for your continuation of the advancement, Jake. I love it. I've seen your work in Missouri. I look forward to seeing the work in the other state. And one of the things that sets you apart is the ability to plan. And in order to plan, you need to have a reliable methods, right? And uh, one of the categories that's overlooked and often not done so well is supervision, right? And so if you're doing it in your market and other markets, you've created a whole mastery around that. And bring us into that world and what that looks like for you.
Sure. I had a conversation with a builder friend in the last couple weeks, and I actually just recorded a video for the Build Show Network about this as well. That I think once you get past that point of like 3 or 4 employees, or past the point of a couple $1 million a year in revenue, there have to be systems in place, because you're beyond the point where it's like, well, I can work Saturday and get this under control, or I can figure out how to send more emails in the morning before I go put my bags on. There's a transition point that took me way too long to realize I was already past, where you have to say, this is the way our company does these things, and we all talk about it, and we all know that this is how this has to be done, and we train for it, and then we inspect for it, and everybody is on the same page. And those processes go from, a employee handbook that says how you operate for what days of the week you're going to be at the work, all the way to a checklist that's like, before you can install drywall, you have to do these 65 things, or before we can pour concrete, these things have to be inspected. And it's written down, and it's acknowledged by the entire company. And it's a real challenge to try to get everybody on the same page once you're beyond 2 people, or 3 people. And now we're 9 people in a week or so when we have our college help come on board. There are people that work with my company that I now don't know as well as I would like, but they have the information accessible to them, and their supervisors have that information so that they can apply the same standards that I apply to my work.
It's uniform language, right? I like that you have that procedurally done. But the key word that you started it off with, we train on that. We train on that before the work happens. We train on that as the checklist of it happening. And then that language is repeated. It's the same as emergency responders, right? Or giving the code out so that people aren't trying to articulate what's going on based on the moment, based on the emotion or based on the discovery. They're doing it based on the preferred language, that the uptake is there so that the action and response is clear and concise.
Yeah, and we have kind of a leg up on some people because I make so many videos for online and because I put so much stuff on Instagram. I'm taking pictures constantly, and our company operates on Slack, the platform where we can all message back and forth. Slack will get a picture and it'll be a picture of a refrigerator and a door that can't open. And it says, do not allow any of our interior designers or architects to do this to us ever again. Let's talk tomorrow morning at the production meeting about why this is important. And now everybody's went home thinking about what's wrong with that refrigerator. What did we do? And then that's the first topic that comes up. Hey, can we talk about that picture? If everybody's sitting in one room talking about one problem, that level of supervision, that level of communication and training is something that I think a lot of the people in our industry tend to miss.
I agree with you. And I think it's wonderful that communication is key in your business. And obviously it is such an important piece. And that's why you guys have been in business for 40 years. Right, Jake? And it's amazing that you are doing videos and that you are engaging people, because if you can empower your team to think and do, and then have those discussions, I'm sure you're getting more productivity out of them as well. Would you say so?
I would also say that the videos cause my guys to go, hey, that can't look like that. We're going to record a video. We have to fix that before they get here with the cameras. So it's a bonus, I would say, is that they're like, somebody might take a picture of this, or Mark might be here taking a tour and he might take a picture of this. So we have to make sure that this is absolutely correct.
It's funny that you say that, because a lot of manufacturers are using lean manufacturing principles. And the essence of that is also taking videos and learning and doing, and you're doing the same thing in your company at a building level, which is outstanding. So let's kind of shift a little bit. I love that you are doing retrofits. I love that you do new construction, and I love that you build with high performance. What is a net zero house in your eyes? And how are you building your homes with that type of process? Why is it so important? And where are you finding materials in order to make these outcomes happen?
Sure. So I would start by saying that the terminology that our industry wants to put a label on everything is really tough. So I always say, like, passive house could be great, but are we paying for a plaque, or are we paying for a really good house? Are we paying for a really well-built house, or are we paying for something that's going to be net zero? Well, we can make Walmart net zero if we put enough solar panels on the roof. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build really durable, really efficient, really low load homes that are going to be long-term, comfortable, and healthy for our clients. And we're trying to do so in a way that our carpenters in a market, Columbia, Missouri and Kansas City, Missouri, while not the Stone Ages, this is not Maine, and this is not, San Francisco, where everyone is green-minded and where everyone is trying to make the planet better. We're paying 11 cents a kilowatt hour on average for electricity here. This is not the solar panel market in the United States. So we don't have teams that have institutional knowledge for two owners of how to do things in a net zero mind or a passive house mind or anything like that. So we're trying our best to make it materials that we can go to the lumberyard and buy. Yes, we're still ordering triple glazed windows from Europe a lot of the times, and there are some tapes and membranes that they're just a little bit ahead of us. But for the most part, we're asking our carpenters that are in charge of our business, our building envelope, to use items that they might use on any other job site in town. And for the most part, we're asking our insulators to show up with the same stuff that they had on their truck from a spec house this morning. We're just asking for deliberate, considered approaches and a little bit better oversight on our part to say, well, yeah, but if you do this, it's going to cause this problem. So let's do it this way. And next time we'll bid it this way. Across the board, you cut the board wrong, we can go to the lumberyard and get another one. We can keep plugging away today, or we can call for another order. It's way more difficult to get anybody on board if they're like, well, it's going to be 12 weeks before that gets here, so the job's just going to sit still. They still need to work every day. They still need to show up every day. So I think that's been one of the biggest keys to our success. The overwhelming idea that this is simple and we can do it with the things that we have. And if we're deliberate in our approach, it will be simple.
So simplifying things, I'm going to bring up something that's very common to both of you. Jake probably knows what this is. And Audrey, I don't believe you do, but you probably have seen some of the videos and posts he's done of it. So you both are familiar with cranes and the lifting power and precision needed with cranes. You could see Jake's facial expression. He knows exactly where I'm going with this. So once upon a time, I believe this was the first time we met. This is Columbia, Missouri, the very famous Hilltop Aarow project. And I'm coming around the bend, and there's this nice winding road through a nice rolling hill area. And the first thing that catches my eye is this giant crane and a building peeking out on top of the hill. As you grow up the serpentine pathway that takes a good 8 minutes to get through, it's a nice hill. The crane is there, the operator's there. Jake is smiley and welcoming, of course, but he's also managing film crews and delivery vehicles and a bunch of site work that's happening. So Audrey, if you could picture a crane sitting there and the orchestration about to go on very early in the morning, this is dependent not on that hour of the day, but on things that happen weeks and weeks in advance. And that dependence was, if I remember this correctly, Jake, 2 pieces of plywood about this big.
Yeah.
And the plywood had 4 holes in both. And this was templated for the house and for the work at the factory to produce a prefabricated, mostly finished, elaborate steel deck that would overhang and overlook the valley. And the crane goes right into right into motion. That's funny. But crane operators know that their time is valuable. They're also friends with Jake, but they're moving, right? So sometimes people move at a clip even faster than you can move or orchestrate. And the whole deck was lifted, the whole deck was put into place, and it was connected, cantilevered off of the building with, as the legend has it, 8 bolts. So 8 bolts are putting this on. Reason this is so important, again, is weeks in advance, those were orchestrated with a plaque. And Jake ensured that that piece of plywood marked on site from the concrete and the mechanisms of structure was taken to the factory. And when the factory came back, the crane operator simply did a lift. And there's a little bit more orchestration because obviously there's chains from the crane that had to not interfere with the trusses that also portrayed over the deck. Jake, this was a fine way to meet a professional like yourself. And I know you had another 12 people on site working interior and doing other portions. But what did I miss? And what are the highlights of an install like that for you and your team?
Yeah, so that is a really good example of the team being in place during the planning stage of construction. So that is the Hilltop Aarow project is a house Steve Basic and I built here in Columbia, Missouri. Steve is the architect and we're the builders. And we have a steel fabricator in our market, Emmett Russell with Russell Built, who is absolutely amazing. And we knew from day one that Emmett was going to be involved. So Steve literally said, "This is what I'm thinking. Do you think Emmett can build that?" I said, "Absolutely, he can build that. He can build anything we ask him to. He just built a 8-foot diameter stainless steel globe for the city. You know, he can do it in his small fabrication shop, his 3-man operation. They can do whatever." And there's actually 3 pieces of plywood in that story, Mark. Yeah. So we got two to set our bolts in the concrete, and Emmett kept the third one that matched them perfectly so that he could say, no, this is the piece of plywood I gave you. It's your fault that the bolts don't fit instead of being his. And that planning from day one, that we knew the deck was going to be there, we knew that Emmett was going to build it, we knew the abilities that his company had. We took all that to the structural engineer. The structural engineer said, yeah, that looks good. Like, he literally just said, yeah, it looks fine. I wouldn't change anything. Um, and then that thing started the second concrete was poured, so that we knew exactly what was going on. And that's the planning, that's the teamwork that you just don't see in residential construction. The planning side of residential construction is skipped quite often, to the point where it's just like, well, what's the problem today? We'll show up and fix the problem today. We can't do that when you're flying a deck into place that's held in place by only 8 bolts. The problems have to be sorted before they actually happen. And I think that's it is a marker of how good of planning our team is capable of executing. It's not just me. I'm not the one swinging the hammer. I'm not the one that's the project manager. You know, the folks that I get to work with are the reason that we succeed, you know.
That is an amazing story, and I'm so glad you celebrated that, because it just makes us realize that pre-construction planning is the key in all types of construction, in all building, and that's how we have these success stories. So Jake, with Aarow Building, what are you seeing as the trends that clients are asking now for their homes?
I would say that we're in a unique position in the market now, that people are sorting, like, they're searching for us in particular. So we're very lucky that we get a lot of phone calls asking for us to do what we do normally. They're asking for durability, they're asking for well-built, they're asking for energy efficiency and health and comfort. And everything that we talk about publicly is project management and health and comfort and durability. And like we were saying, locally purchased products, the off-the-shelf stuff to do the house of the future sort of thing. We've done a really good job of evangelizing that to the point where our clients, for the most part, are asking for that now.
That is a
So,
wonderful thing. That doesn't usually happen. And so to see your success and to know that clients are asking for it, it just really proves the method of, one, you're a great communicator and you're building well, because really, let's face it, can't be around business for 40 years, can't keep doing projects without having success, and you've really nailed it. Last question for you. I know that you're doing a lot of retrofits. What are you seeing in that space? Is it more retrofits for single family? Are you doing multifamily? Where are you doing these retrofits, and why is it so important right now? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
I think the well, the housing market and the cost increase that we've seen over the last few years has worked wonders for the remodeling side of our business. There are quite a few more people interested in spending money on staying where they are. We're seeing people start to understand that the problems with their house are comfort related, and they're understanding that we can resolve the comfort issues. I looked at a project that I believe is probably going to come to fruition yesterday. That is a house that's only 30 years old, and they're talking about buying European windows and triple glazed Schuco windows to install in a house that has 2x6 walls with batt insulation. And they're like, well, but I'm not uncomfortable when I'm next to the wall. I'm uncomfortable when I'm next to the window. And that's why I don't want to, that's why none of our furniture is pushed close to that large window, because it's uncomfortable. That's an easy one. We can do comfort stuff all day, every day. That's, and then you get the benefit of, if it's designed for health and comfort, then that's energy efficiency. So she said, the potential client said, do you think our electric bill will go down? And I said, I'm not certain we were talking about the electric bill. Like, we were talking about comfort. I'm just trying to resolve comfort issues. The electric bill is a sidebar thing that I don't necessarily have a prediction on. Between you and I, it'll go down. But I wasn't going to sell the project to that client based off of that. I was there to try to resolve a comfort issue. And I didn't want to be like, oh, and that your house is going to be X, Y, and Z dollars more cost effective to live in. No, it's going to be more comfortable. Quit looking at energy efficiency as a ROI.
That's proper listening, though. It's a really unique gift you have for determining why someone is asking you to do that. right? Other folks could have just said, they want windows, right? Okay. Well, that a keen sense of listening will determine that if we take this step, this outcome will be achieved, but we're not factoring in everything else that's going to be in its path, right? And one of the listenings that I've had for your presentations over the years is when you're introducing your projects and when you're talking about materials that maybe are unfamiliar in the marketplace in general, you're not only saying what that is and how it's installed, but you're applying the why and the steps it takes to get there. Um, it's fine for people to be in the world of just saying yes, but when you have the insight as to what they're going for and you apply the insight of the steps involved that will really be affecting them, like, oh yeah, we can put in that new kitchen, but since you're living in that house, the first step we need to do is a makeshift kitchen in another part of your house. These are the inconvenient parts that are going to be in our relationship during that phase of the water shut off and the gas moving and the electric, right? There's deliberate steps that you're keyed into. And when you listen to Jake's videos and when you meet this team, remember that those learning lessons are things you can apply in your relationships to clients. And if you're a client, in your relationship to your builder and your workforce. Jake is not doing this to make his name well known. He's doing this so other people avoid the pathways of going sideways, right? And the successes to get there. It's really admirable, Jake.
So I will tell you that one of the conversations with the window client, I asked to see the water heater, I asked to see the furnace and the air handler, and I asked how long it had been since the sewer had been cambered. And they were like, "Why are we talking?" And I said, "It has nothing to do with the windows, but I don't want to see you spend $200,000 on windows and then find out that you also need a new water heater and a new furnace. Like, we need to make sure that this is the right investment for you." And there are times where we go, "Look, you shouldn't finish off the basement. You should take care of the sewer issue first." And that conversation stems, just like you were saying, entirely from, we screwed something up in the past, we had a mistake happen, or we finished a basement remodel and then they had sewer back up. And I was like, those two things are not connected in any way. And I feel absolutely horrible that we just spent all of your $200,000 worth of savings on this little basement, and now you're going to have to borrow money to fix the sewer. And so it's someone's mistake. And I try to make everything that we put online something that I wish somebody would have told me earlier in life, or that I would have figured out sooner in life, so that it's every mistake costs somebody money. Try to make it somebody else's mistake that you learn from instead of your own, so that it doesn't cost you that money.
That's a partner, right? And besides the delicate, detailed craftsmanship that happens on your project, those are the parts that folks remember. They remember those strengths that you carry. And I will say, those words I don't use lightly. The detail and the craftsmanship on Jake's projects are, in fact, at the rough stage. A lot of times we can lipstick that at the finish stage. That's a glory word for folks. However, if your rough stage is clean and tight like a piece of furniture, everything else is going to flow. I was physically there when the elaborate kitchen fit was going on, and you could tell that this man can make a piano if you asked him to. And he was looking through the entire subfloor and the perimeter walls that touched in a number of places, and the man was just smiling because he knew it was going to go well. And then the trucks got Jake, people can find you where?
Best place is Instagram, Jake.Bruton on Instagram. You can check us out on the Build Show Network weekly. And Steve Basic, Peter Yost, and I co host a podcast called the Unbuild It Podcast. You can get on any of the podcast listening platforms or YouTube. And our company website, as you can see behind Mark and Audrey's head, arrowbuilding.com. And Aarow is spelled funny because 40 years ago, AA was a phone book thing. Now it's the bane of my existence because I have to spell it for every person that we order stuff from. No,
It's
we do have an account. I promise we have an account. It's AAROW.
It's a great brand. I really like the pride that goes into it. The 40 years is an accomplishment, and I hope the folks out there find you, and as well as not only the people looking to do projects, but the people in your area that can learn and continue that fine tradition that you do in both Columbia, Missouri, and Kansas City. Jake's a fine friend of all of ours. Look him up. AAROW. For Audree Grubesic, my name is Mark Wille. We're on High Performance Build with Jake of Aarow Building. All of this and more on Offsite Dirt.